And so, despite the fact that the mosque was a small building, it wasn't the structure itself, it is the spirit that is in it. It is the feeling of the people and their connection to Allah Azza wa Jal that really distinguishes a masjid. After being in these very difficult situations, I was asked to go to the Gulf region, and I spent a year in the Gulf. And there, I found a masjid. I'm not saying which country it's in. We don't like to name countries. But this masjid was the most beautiful thing I ever saw in my life. 10,000 people could make salat in the courtyard. The domes on the masjid were like the Ottoman Turkish domes. The Indian Mughal style, every different styles of masajid in the world you would find in this one building. The porcelain, the amount of wealth that they put in this building, I was dazzled, and then they called the adhan for Salatul Maghrib. And in a masjid where 10,000 people could pray in the courtyard, only 40 people came to make Salatul Maghrib. And so I'm looking at the difference. One masjid is a humble, simple place, and another one has every single thing you could want in the dunya, but the people are running to the simple structure and they are running away from the expensive one. So there's something to this. There is something important that we need to understand, and in the context of America, I wanted to, as our earlier speaker Salakin had said, I want to, bring something back from the historical memory of North America, of Islam here, especially for the younger generation. As a young African American, this is in the 60s, I found myself disillusioned with the war, just like many people are today. Disillusioned with fighting and with killing, and I didn't want to be involved in it. I said, what did these Vietnamese people never did anything to me? I'm having a problem getting a job right here. I can't even, in some places, go in the same bathroom as the people of lighter skin. So why am I going to go over there and die? I was confused. And so I left the country, and I was seeking a belief in the Creator. I wanted that version of Islam that Malcolm X had spoken about when he went to the pilgrimage. And he was talking about people of all colors. He talked about white and brown and black and yellow, all together as brothers and sisters. He was talking about this, but where was it actually practiced? I searched to try to find a community. Alhamdulillah, I found a practice right here in New York, on the streets of Brooklyn. It was an idea that was forming, which is right in line with the great scholars and the great Islamic movements throughout the history of this deen. I came back down into America. It was a little dangerous for me at that time, although Jimmy Carter forgave me when he came in as president. But at that time it was dangerous for me to come into America, but I said I have to go to this masjid, and I found the Dar al-Islam movement. And this movement, which is the basis of the community here, they were talking about iqamat ad-din. They were talking about not just praying and not just wearing clothes, but they were talking about the idea of a community. And that community is founded around a bay'ah. It's founded around a pledge of allegiance, that you pledge allegiance to your leader. And at the same time, the leader is an organic part of the community. So the community is a collective. It is shura. The community is run by mutual consultation, where all of the people are involved to come out to solve the problems as a jama'ah. And that is in line with what the Prophet ﷺ had said, Yadullah ma'al jama'ah, the hand of Allah is with the jama'at. And so they were talking about community. And I came into Brooklyn, and being from Boston, when I wasn't a Muslim, every time we went to New York and Philly, we were going to have to fight. Because that's the way it was in those days. Right? This time I came to Brooklyn, the brothers opened up their arms. It was a community, it was a family. They were talking about establishing the call to prayer in the neighborhoods, on the streets, calling people to prayer 5 times per day. This is something totally different for us. Because as Christians, we would pray on special occasions, on Sundays, and we would pray when we felt that desire. But to do it in an organized way, to recognize the Creator of the heavens and the earth constantly, this was something new. They were also talking about the masjid as a service center. That the masjid would not be just a place of prayer, but it would be a service center, and there would be somebody on reception who would be constantly there to deal with the needs of the community. Even the non-Muslim people could actually have their needs dealt with by the masjid itself. This is what Malcolm X was talking about. This was the transition coming into the broad practice of Islam, but with a North American context. They also brought the concept of a sufa. And the sufa is that the masjid is like a hostel. It's also a place where people can lay their head. It's also a place where people who have difficulties can come out of the community. And they talked about arat. They talked about security. That the community needs to be secured. We have to protect our community. There are criminals in the streets. There are so many things happening. And so the concept of community, of service, of protection, that was an idea that spread to other movements, and really at that point was the cutting edge of Islam in North America. They also talked about a program for the youth. And this is really important because one of the biggest problems we have in all of our Muslim communities is the youth. I was the Imam of the Jami Mosque in Canada from 1985 to 1990. We had 1,000 people for Salat al-Jumu'ah, every single nation in the world represented in our mosque. The biggest problems we had was youth problems and family problems. And so a masjid that does not deal with the problem of families and the problem with the youth is not actually fulfilling the message of Islam in this context. Because Muslims come here from extended families and they're cut off. People are accepting Islam and they lose their families in many cases. And so the community is like a home away from home. It's supposed to be a family to really take you in. And that is what the whole concept of the Dar al-Islam, the abode of peace, that the ulama spoke about when they were talking about establishing Islam on the face of the planet Earth. And so they talked about the Jawala Scouts, the Bint al-Mu'mineen. They had Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts with an Islamic flavor. They actually had active youth programs, dynamic youth programs. And we're talking now about the late 60s and early 70s. I mean, 1971, I'm coming down here, that's what? That's 40 years. This is 40 years ago. People were talking about this and they were instituting. By the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal, I had the opportunity to travel to Medina. And not only travel, but to live in Medina for 6 years of my life as a young man, and my wife, Sister Karima. We lived there. Two of our children were born in Medina. And so, alhamdulillah, in that atmosphere, we walked around, we smelled the air, and we lived in the environment of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On learning Arabic and studying the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and looking at what is called fiqh al-seerah. That means, what do you understand from the seerah? And you will see the great ulama have written books on fiqh al-seerah. And what they have established is that when the Prophet ﷺ made the hijrah from Mecca to Medina, he established, he first was involved in 3 great activities. Remember these 3 great activities. This is the foundation of a Muslim society that spread from a small little group out of Arabia. By 100 years, Islam had spread to China. It had gone to Morocco, the Atlantic Ocean, north to Russia, south, deep south to the Swahili coastland. It spread faster than any other religion, any ideology in the history of humanity. What was the foundation of this spread? The Prophet ﷺ was involved in 3 activities. One was to strengthen the relationship of the ummah, of the Islamic nation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How was this strengthened? it was strengthened with the establishment of the masjid. But the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ was not just a beautiful structure to look at. It was about 100 yards, it was square, about 100 yards. Very simple structure. There were no rugs, actually carpets on the ground. Very simple, so simplicity is right in line with the Sunnah. It's not out there. We want simplicity, that can fit into our environment here in North America. It was a simple structure, but we would call it today an all-purpose Islamic center. Not only did people pray and make prostration, but it was also a place of ta'aleem, a place of knowledge, teaching and learning. It was also a place where the Muslims were involved in shura. Mutual consultation was being done. It is reported that when the great armies of the Ahzab came to attack Medina, this is the largest army ever came to attack the Muslims before. The Prophet ﷺ, he went to the masjid. And he took counsel with his followers, and a Persian man who could not speak Arabic properly, he was not Qurayshi, Salman al-Farisi, radiallahu anh, he said, when our people are under attack, we build a khandak, we build a trench around, and that takes away the strength of the large force. And so the Prophet ﷺ, although he is receiving revelation from above 7 heavens, he accepts the position of a Persian man who doesn't even speak Arabic properly. This is shura. We recognize each other, not based on race, or on language, or on color, but it is taqwa. It is iman and taqwa really that distinguishes one believer from another. The masjid also was a place of community service. And it is interesting that the Prophet ﷺ established the sufa. And I found the sufa in Medina, and I thought about the sufa in Brooklyn, right? And there it was. Okay, that's where they got the name from. But you see the sufa in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, there were people who came into the community who did not have a lot of skills. They couldn't do that much. They were in a tough situation, so they could stay in the sufa, but what they could do was learn and teach. So they gave back to the community. It's like skills development. So you will train a person and let him use his abilities from where he's at. And so they gave back to the community. They formed a very important part of Medina. Number 2, strengthening the relationship. These are the foundations of the Muslim community. Strengthen the relationship between Muslims, one to another. The Prophet ﷺ did al-mu'akhat, and that is brotherhood. He established a relationship that Muslims should have with one another, not just saying salams and I'll see you next Friday, but you have to care about your brother and sister. He said that he was a special brother with Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, and that Hamza, Sayyidina Hamza, was the brother of Sayyidina Zayd radiallahu anhuma, and he made brotherhood between the Muhajirin immigrants of Mecca and the Ansar of Medina. And so the famous case of Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu, who becomes a close brother of Sa'd ibn Abi Rabi'ah radiallahu anhu, he becomes close to him. Sa'd is ready to offer everything that he has. Take half. Abdurrahman said, no, just give me some twigs. Give me something to sell. Okay, so he took some clarified butter, some twigs, he sold it, and soon he was one of the richest people in Medina. Another thing they did, and this is an interesting point, what they would do is what we call here sharecropping. So if you have land, you will donate or you will give a certain portion of your land to your brother and sister. They will work the land and you share the profits. And so we can interpret that today as empowerment. It's a form of empowerment, skills training, skills empowerment. So if you have a skill as a brother or a sister, you take an apprentice, you take a young brother, you take a young sister under your wing, and you give back. You empower that person, so that person is not just taking food from you, but they can actually produce the food. So skills training and development, this was a very important part of that relationship, so that our relationship is closer now. than it was. This is one of the bases of the foundation of the community. Number 3,